Welcome to another episode of the Common Man's Take on Sports with Kevin and
Quentin.
All right. Some pretty good games yesterday for college football. I noticed Georgia finally got back on track in their game against Kentucky. They completely annihilated Kentucky in that game, 51-13. Georgia looked really good. Carson Beck looked good. Their running game was okay, but Georgia's proven they can run the ball when they need to, so not a huge deal. I'm pretty sure they had over 100 yards rushing anyway. But yeah, Georgia looked really good. Yeah, they had 173 yards rushing, so yeah, their rushing looked great. They look like a complete team, passing 435 yards and then rushing for another 173. Their defense looked good. They held Kentucky to 13 points, which was a lot better than last year's game between Kentucky and Georgia. But yeah, Georgia really came out and looked strong. Michigan looked really strong in their game against Minnesota. They also looked like a very complete team. They owned that game, scoring 10 points in the first quarter, 14 in the second, 21 in the third, and then 7 in the fourth. Minnesota scored 10 points in the first half and never scored again the rest of the game. The Oklahoma-Texas game. Man, that was an exciting game. That game went all the way to the end. And how about Dillon Gabriel? What that pass at the end to put Oklahoma up for good. And then that defensive stop there at the end on Texas to win that game 34-30. Man, I told you that had the potential to be a very exciting game. And it was. Beginning to end, that was a very exciting game. Ohio State and Maryland. Ohio State struggled. They were tied at the half, 10-10. And then finally, in the fourth quarter, they ran away with it, scoring 17 points to nothing for Maryland. But that game was a lot closer than that score indicates. I actually saw a clip from Paul Feinbaum today that said that he has Ohio State over Michigan because they played a complete game against Maryland. Can you believe that, Quentin?
No, I cannot believe that.
Hey,
Ohio State almost lost to me.
Oh, I agree, but that's not even my point. So a complete game means that you
flat out
destroying. You play complete across the board, right? Passing, running, defense, everything, right? So first of all, their defense was a bit suspect, but that's okay because they did hold Maryland to 17 points. However, their rushing game, Maryland stuffed them time and time again. Ohio State managed 62 rushing yards. 62 rushing yards. I'm going to say that again. 62 rushing yards against Maryland. What do you think about that? Is that a complete team to you? No. 62 rushing yards.
No, that's not a complete team. 62. That's not average for a team. That's not a complete game.
And so part of that, once again, is that offensive line that we've talked about all year. They're still having offensive line struggles. And if they don't clean that up, I'm pretty sure they got Penn State coming up on the docket real soon. I think they got Purdue next, and then they play Penn State. Man, that Penn State game could be ugly for OSU. If they don't fix those offensive line problems.
Yeah, we all know Penn State usually has a good defense, so they better fix that offensive line, or else that defense is gonna eat them up in that game. Because Penn State's defense looking pretty good.
Just to give a little perspective to this, so Maryland passed for almost 200 yards, 196 yards, 1 touchdown, and then Tulia had 2 picks. But they also rushed for 106 yards. So they do need to still tighten that defense up a little bit. Because it looked like the Hemby was able to rush for 4.4 yards per carry. They held Littleton a little bit to 3.5. But I still have questions about Ohio State. They're still struggling in games they shouldn't be struggling in. And, that game was in question only into the fourth quarter. So, to me, that's just not, I don't know. I'm just not really high on them yet. Florida State looked good. They beat Virginia Tech pretty soundly, 39-17. They scored 22 points in the first quarter. So Florida State was all over. They jumped all over Virginia Tech right away. Arizona and USC. That game was closer than it should have been. USC trailed for most of the game. Once again, their defense failed them. And they had to outscore the opponent.
Yeah, they were trailing 17-0 in the middle of the second quarter. And they came back. Then at the half, it was 17-14. So you was trailing 17-0 against Arizona.
That defense is eventually going to cost them. It's going to cost them their playoff bid and probably their Pac-12 championship bid. There's no way they should have been that close a game against Arizona, 43-41. They actually won in overtime by a 2-point conversion that Caleb Williams converted.
Yeah.
In a third overtime.
Yeah, that's not normal for a team like USC. I mean, that defense has got to get better, or else you're not going to beat Notre Dame next week.
No. Well, I don't know about that because Notre Dame just got mollywopped by Louisville. When I say mollywopped, I mean 33-20. But that's not even close to this. At one point, it was like 27-13 or something like that. Like Louisville owned Notre Dame for the majority of that game, and it wasn't even close. So I don't know. USC might get away with a win against Notre Dame next week. Notre Dame ain't looking so hot.
Yeah.
And that Ohio State win over Notre Dame don't look so hot now either.
Yeah, it was 33-13 with 3.5 minutes left in the fourth quarter. So
yep.
Yeah, they got.
So I told you they got mollywopped.
3 picks for Sam Hartman. That's.
Yep. Alabama had a little bit of struggle, but they pulled their win out 26-20.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I didn't really expect it to be a close game. I expected it to be a good one, but not this close.
North Carolina won their game 40-7. You know what's crazy? I don't know if I've ever said this before, but Duke and North Carolina are both really good at football this year. I don't know if I've ever said that before. No, usually they're both good at basketball.
Yeah.
But they both look good at football this year.
Yeah, they're usually basketball schools, They've always been at basketball schools. But this season, they're looking like more than basketball schools.
Yeah, so the last game I want to talk about, and the only reason why I want to talk about it is just kind of how it ended. So it's the Georgia Tech Miami game. And anybody that was watching that game, Miami should have won that game had they knelt out the clock. But instead of kneeling out the clock, they tried to score, fumbled, Georgia Tech recovered, went down the field, and scored the winning touchdown. How about that? How about that? All they had to do was kneel it out and they would have won that game. And instead of kneeling it out, they kept trying to score and they ended up turning the ball over on a fumble. Man.
Yeah, I don't know how many seconds were in that game, but probably, I think less than 30. You got to kneel it. That's what you've got to do on that certain amount of time when you're.
I don't know. You have to go back and look and see how much time was left, but how much ever time was left, they gave Georgia Tech an opportunity to win that game, and Georgia Tech took it.
Oh yeah, 23-20. Wow.
Yep. So now I want to talk about my power rankings after week 6, right?
Yep.
So I'll go through, I'm going to do my top 10, and then I'll let you do yours. So I had Michigan number 1 last week, but Georgia did have a very impressive performance against Kentucky. I will put them back at number 1, but Michigan is a very close number 2. To be honest, I really could have picked Michigan as a number 1 in my power rankings this week, and still I would have been comfortable with that. But I'll go Georgia, Michigan, 1, number 2. Number 3, for me in the power rankings, I am going to move up Oklahoma. Oklahoma really, I like the way they played Texas. I like the way that they toughed that out, and they really gave Texas they punched them in the mouth, and Texas kind of responded a little bit, but Oklahoma responded again. And I like the counter punches, and I really thought Oklahoma played really well, and I think that they have vastly improved between last year and this year in the Brent Venerables. And I like them. I think they're going to be. They may end up winning the Big 12. So they're my number 3 team. Number 4, I'm going to roll with Penn State. No, not Penn State. I'm Florida State. Excuse me. Wrong state team. Florida State's number 4. Number 5 will be my Penn State. Number 6, I'm going to go with Ohio State. Number 7, I'm going to go Washington. Number 8 is Oregon. Number 9, I'm going to shift North Carolina up. North Carolina is my number 9 team. They've played well this far. They've dominated most of the teams they've played. I think that they're going to be one of the better teams in the ACC this year. So North Carolina is my number 9 team. My number 10 team for this week, man, I'm going to give a nod to Louisville. The way they handled Notre Dame, they handled Notre Dame better than Ohio State handled Notre Dame. Matter of fact, I already put Louisville above Ohio State. But for now, I'm going to leave them at number 10 because they've played well all the way up to this point. But everybody was kind of like, well, they haven't really played anybody. Well, they just played somebody, Notre Dame, and they mollywopped them. So, based off their performance against Notre Dame, Louisville is my number 10 team, hands down. What say you, sir?
Alright, for my number 1 team, I'm placing Georgia back on the throne. You know, what they did to Kentucky was just amazing. And it was way better than last year, so I got to give them number 1 back. My number 2 team would be Michigan. Right now, it's a close race for me, for Georgia and Michigan for that number 1 spot. But I'm going with Michigan number 2. How Georgia handled Kentucky was just great. Way better than last year. My number 3 team will be Oklahoma. After their win against Texas, yeah, there's no stopping them because if I can check the schedule.
I don't know about no stopping them, but man, they look good. I agree with that. Like, there's no, I got no argument with that one, man.
Yeah, they don't play much for the rest of their schedule. So, yeah, I mean, Oklahoma may not be stopped. I got them as my number 3 team. Number 4, this is a tough one right here, but I'm going with Florida State because how they handled Virginia Tech in that first quarter, 22 points, that was pretty impressive. For my number 5 team, I had to go with Penn State because Penn State has a good defense, and Drew Aller is looking pretty good as their starting QB.
So one of the reasons why I put Penn State over Ohio State right now, and I'm sure that this is the reason why you're doing that also, is because to me Penn State's playing more like a complete team than Ohio State is. They run when they have to run and they throw when they have to throw. And their defense is really good. They look like more of a complete team than Ohio State currently. Now, maybe when they play in a couple of weeks, that won't be true. But as of right now, just based off what I've seen, Penn State's a more complete team than Ohio State.
Yeah, I gotta agree with you. They played. They really handled Northwestern. In that second half, because first half was they were sleepwalking, but they finally woke up and they played all through that second half. And I gotta give them that number 5 spot because they do have a good defense. So my number 6 team, I'm going to go with Ohio State. I think that Ohio State deserves to be at number 6 because the way they played against Maryland in that first half was they were just sleepwalking.
Well, that's been the tale of their whole season. They're struggling with teams they shouldn't be struggling with.
Yeah, like Maryland, they're struggling with them. They can't be struggling against them. That's a game they're supposed to start off great and then end it great. Here, my number 17. I'm gonna go ahead and go with Oregon. I think Oregon deserves to be number 7. Their defense is great. Their offense is great as well. So they have a great team, great coach. But the test will be on next Saturday when they face Washington. So, yeah.
Who's playing Washington next week?
Oregon.
Oh, yeah, I'll be watching that game for sure.
Yeah, it's gonna be a good one. Okay. My number 18. I'm going with Washington. I feel like Oregon has slightly a better defense than Washington because the way they handle their teams is great, and I think it's just kind of better than Washington's defense because their defense is pretty much average for a college football team. My number 9 team will be Louisville. The way they handled Notre Dame was great. Let me check. I don't think they gave him much rushing yards either. But yeah, their defense was just great. It's just the way they handle them. It's great. My number 10 team, I'll give Texas one more chance. I'm going to go with Texas as my number 10 team. I'll give them one more chance to improve.
So you're going to put Texas over undefeated North Carolina that's been handling their business?
I'm sorry, North Carolina, they just I don't feel like they've played much.
Fair enough.
I think they need to play more, and they do play Duke this season. So I just think they haven't had any tests this season so far. But I haven't seen much much tests from North Carolina this season. So that's why I'm putting them outside the top 10.
So everybody keeps saying about Michigan, they haven't had any tests yet.
Yeah, Yeah, that's that. Yeah, that's what they keep saying about Michigan, and that kind of bothers me.
They beat South Carolina 31-17. They beat Minnesota 31-13. They beat Pitt 41-24 and Syracuse 40-7.
Yeah, I mean, is that not enough for you?
I'm just saying.
Yeah.
No, that's North Carolina's schedule.
Oh, here.
Yeah.
See.
Yeah, that's North Carolina's schedule. That's why I'm saying I made them number 10. Because everybody's giving Georgia credit for beating South Carolina, right? You're going to give Georgia credit, you got to give North Carolina credit, right? I'm just saying. They beat an SEC team. And just the other day, Kirby Smart said every SEC team should be ranked right now. Oh. All right, then. No, it's fine. Keep
next week they
keep
play
going,
Miami.
Keep going with your why you got Texas at number 10.
I mean, after the Miami game, if they beat Miami, I'll give them a chance in the top 10. But
Miami just lost to Georgia Tech, homie.
Yeah, I know that's.
Go ahead.
It is what it is. Okay. Yeah, I'm sorry, but I just don't think North Carolina has played anyone this year.
Okay.
South Carolina, they're not. They're okay, I guess, but I just think they were kind of an easy opponent.
I'm pretty sure Georgia struggled with them. Let's see.
Georgia did struggle. 14.
So North Carolina beat South Carolina 31-14, right? So that's 17. So let's go back and see. Oh yeah, Georgia beat them 24-14. So North Carolina actually beat South Carolina worse than Georgia beat them. I mean, what else do you want?
Well, they haven't played anyone yet besides Appalachian State.
Okay.
Besides them.
Okay. All right. Keep going.
Still, even if they beat Miami, there's probably a 12% chance I will let them in the top 10.
Hey.
Just saying.
Bro, they beat South Carolina worse than Georgia did. I'm just saying. They handled them. But that is what it is. I got you. Texas isn't a bad pick. They've only lost one game, and it was Oklahoma, so not a bad pick. For me right now, the only two teams that have separated themselves head and shoulders above everybody else, and this is just my opinion. I mean, I'm sure people have their own opinions and their own arguments with me, but the only two teams that have separated themselves above everybody else and just truly, been rolling is Georgia and Michigan.
Yeah.
Georgia has had their hiccups, but I know there's still a few undefeated teams left. But to me, USC, we all know they got their problems. They got the defense. Oregon is getting there. We'll see what happens against Washington. Penn State, if they beat Ohio State, then I'll put them up there with Michigan and Georgia.
Yeah, if they beat Ohio State, yeah, they're definitely.
But right now, for me, Georgia and Michigan are the ones handling their business the best and pretty much just leaving no doubt game after game after game that, they are the best teams. So for me, those two have separated themselves from the rest of the pack. That's Georgia and Michigan, and then everybody else. Now, maybe that changes once Michigan gets to the Penn State and the Ohio State games and even the Maryland game. Maryland gave Ohio State some trouble. They may give Michigan trouble down the road. I know Michigan's kind of got a little murderer's row there at the end of the season because they got to play Penn State, Maryland, and Ohio State all back to back. So we'll see how that goes for them. But for now, just for me, Michigan and Georgia are head and shoulders above everybody else. It's those two and the rest of the field. I know what Paul Feinbaum said, but he's an idiot. Everybody knows he's an idiot. He has no clue what he was talking about. He does no research or anything. He just spouts stuff out of his mouth without even. He likes to just say stuff to make people irritated and be controversial. He knew he was wrong when he did his power rankings. The truth and the honest truth for right now is Michigan and Georgia and everybody else. Yeah. Florida State's had their issues.
Yeah, like their issues against Clemson, you know?
Yeah, Oklahoma's had their issues. It's just, obviously Texas has had their issues. Alabama's had theirs. Just, to me, those two haven't shown any weaknesses yet where everybody else has. So, for me, that's why those two are head and shoulders above everybody else. Ohio State has shown issues, weakness with their offensive line, their run game. Their defense is still spotty. It's better than it was last year, but still spotty to me. So, Penn State's probably the closest team in that field to Michigan and Georgia, in my personal opinion right now, with Oregon right behind them. Because Oregon does play really good offense and defense. So, to me, it's Michigan, Georgia, and then your second tier starts with Penn State and Oregon. My personal opinion.
Yeah, I gotta agree with you, you know. Georgia and Michigan have been handling their opponents like it was nothing. Yeah, I agree. Penn State, Oregon, right behind them, because Oregon, like I said earlier, has a great defense, a great offense. Penn State has a great defense, great offense. So, yep, I totally agree with you.
Yeah, that's just the way I've seen it so far. Again, that can change next week. I believe Michigan plays IU next week.
Yeah.
So, IU has a decent defense, but
it is going to be at Michigan, so.
Yeah, I still expect Michigan to, just the way they've been playing, roll in that game, but we'll see. You never know. IU does present problems for Michigan from time to time, so we'll see how that goes. That is all for the show today. Just wanted to go over some of the results and then just give our power rankings after week 6. That's just kind of how we see it. Don't forget to subscribe, click like, leave us comments. You can reach us. You can listen to our podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, FM, iHeartRadio, Samsung, Podchasers, any one of those platforms you can find our podcast. If you don't like listening to podcasts, we do have a YouTube channel that you can go to, listen to our episodes. We also have a Facebook page. First name Kevin, last name Quentin. It's got our logo at the top. Common Man's Take on Sports. Please go to any one of those. Subscribe, follow us, hit the like button. We appreciate you guys listening to our podcast. We hope you continue to come back and listen to it. We hope that you recommend it to your friends and family for them to listen to and continue to help us grow our podcast. We thank you, and that is it for today.